Hey guys, it's Taya. I'm going to read you guys a story that was one of my favorites growing up. It's called Mrs. Armitage on Wheels. Mrs. Armitage was out on her bicycle. Breakspear the dog ran alongside. A hedgehog walked across the path. Tring tring went Mrs. Armitage on her bell. What this bike needs, said Mrs. Armitage to herself, is a really loud horn. Mrs. Armitage bought 3 horns. They were all very loud. Beep beep, honk honk, pa-hee-ya her, went Mrs. Armitage on her horns. Then the chain came off. By the time Mrs. Armitage had got it back on again, her hands were all black and greasy. What this bike needs, said Mrs. Armitage to herself, is somewhere to wash your hands. So she got a bucket of water and a towel and a soap rack with a bar of soap, and she hung them all onto the bike. And off she went with beautifully clean hands. What this bike needs, said Mrs. Armitage to herself as she cycled along, if it's to be looked after properly, is a complete toolkit. So she got a toolbox with spanners and screwdrivers and hammers and cans of penetrating oil, and she fixed it onto the back of the bicycle, and off she went. By now Mrs. Armitage was beginning to think about food. What this bike needs, what this bike needs, said Mrs. Armitage to herself, is somewhere to carry a light snack. So she got a tray for apples and bananas and cheese and tomato sandwiches, and a holder bottle of lemonade, and a flask of cocoa, and a special basket for bones and dog biscuits for Breakspear, and she fixed them all onto the bike, and off they went. But by now poor Breakspear was feeling quite tired, running along beside the bicycle. You could tell because his tongue was hanging out and he was panting. What this bike needs, what this bike needs, said Mrs. Armitage to herself, is something for a faithful dog to ride on. So she got some iron brackets and some nuts and bolts and some cushions, and she made a seat for Breakspear, and off they went. They had stopped beside the road for some sandwiches and dog biscuits when it began to rain. Great heavens, said Mrs. Armitage, what this bike needs, Breakspear, is something to keep the rain off. So she got 2 umbrellas, one large, one small, and fixed them onto the bicycle, and off they went. Look at Breakspear. He's sitting, all the snacks are at his feet. Riding through the rain, Mrs. Armitage began to feel rather downhearted. What this bike needs, she said, is a bit of cheerful music. So she got a transistor radio cassette player and a lot of cassettes of cheerful music and a mouth organ so that she could join in, and she fixed them all onto the bike, and off they went. Mrs. Armitage was turning the pedals so fast and blowing the mouth organ so hard that soon she was nearly exhausted. What this bike needs, said Mrs. Armitage to herself, is a bit of extra oomph. What possibly could she add to this contraption? There's so much on there. And so she got some wood and some ropes and some tarp, and she rigged up a mast and a sail, and she added a few yards of bunting and an anchor to the bargain. There she is with her bicycle. And off they went, with the wind behind them, going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster until crash, crunch, clang, clatter, thud. Pahia hurt. Oh no. What this bike needs, Breakspear, said Mrs. Armitage as she picked herself up from the wreckage, is taking to the dump. And what I need is... Whoopee! The end.